Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silver Mont, and this is my review for Nier Automata, however you want to pronounce that, played on the PS4 Pro. This review is not sponsored in any way. I bought this standard edition of the game with my own money. I have not played any of the Drakengard games and know only a little bit about the original Nier. Disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. First up, I'm going to refer to the game as Nier just for the sake of simplicity. But what is Nier? Effectively an action RPG with the emphasis on action. But when you get down to it, the game has many more elements to uncover. It also has bullet hell or shmup moments. The basic premise of the game, however, is that you play as the combat android, designation 2B, and explore a semi-open world doing quests and subquests whilst leveling up. If you've played any of Platinum's games in the past decade, you probably have an immediate feel for how the combat works. It uses the same model established in Bayonetta and effectively unchanged since. Of course, this is an action RPG, but how much of it is action and how much of it is RPG? It is my belief that in fact both aspects suffer from the other. The way I see it, Nier is a game spread too thin, with too little focus. I believe the reason Bayonetta and Metal Gear Rising work so well is that they were laser focused in what they wanted to present to the player, but with Nier, the action gameplay is somewhat dumbed down from what I'm used to, and I believe this is to accommodate the RPG aspects. But then the RPG aspects are extremely light. Your character will level up, gaining more health and damage, but you're very disconnected from this. You have no real choices to make upon leveling up. It just means that your character will get a fraction stronger periodically. And if enemies are too high above your own level, it's effectively pointless to fight them. There is some character customization, however. You can equip 2 sets of weapons at a time, and of those you have swords, large swords, spears and fist weapons to choose from. You also can collect 3 different ranged weapons, and there are several super attacks, or pod programs as the game calls them, which function on a short cooldown. Beyond this, you can equip stat boosting chips to your character. They are androids after all. But overall, the RPG elements are very subdued. You can upgrade your weapons by collecting items in the world, but although they gain new abilities at times, the upgrades feel largely inconsequential. It's just making it do 500 damage instead of 400 damage, for example. It is not a change that is immediately noticeable. That isn't to say the action or the RPG elements feel bad, they just feel extremely simplistic, and each seems to have suffered on account of the other. I can only speak from my own experience, of course, but I often found myself zoning out during the combat and just spamming my way through battle after battle, whilst not really feeling involved or invested in the combat. There are 4 difficulty modes, if I remember correctly. Easy, which enables you to use automatic chips. Basically you hold down one button and the game will play itself for you. Then there's normal, hard and very hard. I believe in hard and very hard the game disables lock-on, and in very hard you die in 1 hit. Very hard sounds tedious, so perhaps hard is the way to play, but overall I feel like the game presented no challenge due to extremely generous defense mechanics. That said, dying in 1 hit in a game with no autosave is not something I think I'll be bothering with, as it sounds again more tedious than anything else. None of the gameplay feels bad or convoluted, it's simply a matter of being somewhat mindless. I'm not sure if I ever had to engage my brain whilst playing in it. It was mostly just run to the red spot on the map and hit square and triangle until stuff dies. That is obviously oversimplifying it to some extent, and I didn't hate the gameplay, I just very quickly realised there's a lack of depth to the combat, a lack of nuance that is to be found in other Platinum games, namely Bayonetta and Metal Gear Rising. It's worth noting, however, that those games are less than 10 hours long. Nier is more of a 40-hour game, so once again I feel like the length actually hurts the overall experience, bizarrely. If Platinum games up to this point have been very condensed, high-octane action movies, maybe they're better off being rather short. But if the gameplay isn't particularly engaging, where does that leave the story? Drakengard, or Dragon Dragoon, is a series infamous for for being extremely weird, and Nier, well, it's pretty weird. There's something like 25 endings to Nier, and though the majority of them are joke endings akin to bad endings from visual novels, there's still 4 to 5 main, proper endings. Simply put, the first time you beat the game is actually more like the halfway point. At this point, it's very hard not to spoil anything, unfortunately. The first playthrough of the game keeps things fairly standard and simple. easy to understand from a story perspective. Humans are living on the moon, androids are fighting for them against alien-made machines that have annexed the Earth. You play as Android 2B accompanied by 9S as you fight back against the machines. Once you beat the game, you play through the game again from 9S's perspective. He is with you for most of the game, which means you'll be doing most of the same stuff again with a few new parts. Once you clear the second route, however, you unlock a continuation of the story, which is where things start to become a lot more interesting. As expected, the game gets extremely weird. There's a lot of, how to put it, anime philosophy. If you've played Metal Gear Solid 2 or watched Evangelion, you probably know what I'm speaking about. Personally, I find it rather obnoxious and even cringeworthy, but I feel like a lot of the message is quite possibly lost in translation, making the result seem like a 16-year-old's existential crisis. But that's just me. This all probably sounds rather negative, doesn't it? Well, actually, I rather enjoyed Nier's story. It was the main thing that kept me playing through the game. I rushed through my second playthrough just to get to the more interesting parts. The world established in Nier is an interesting one, and some of the characters are endearing or at the least interesting. I will say that the localization takes some rather large liberties with them. The game comes with both English and Japanese dubs, and comparing them came with some very interesting differences. Dubs actually leads me on to my next topic, the music. Nier has a beautiful soundtrack, nothing else really to say there. The music is lovely. I found myself looking forwards to the boss battles more for their music than anything else, because bosses are another aspect I found disappointing in Nier. They aren't terrible, but coming off of Metal Gear Rising and Bayonetta, they are disappointing. None of them approach that level for me, and the fact that you level up in Nier means that some bosses I would obliterate in literally 5 seconds. Even though I didn't feel like I was exactly over-leveled, I never really stopped to grind my level up. That's the funny thing about Nier. This review is no doubt sounding extremely negative, but there's not much about the game that's actually bad. It's just that I'm used to such a polished, great experience from Platinum that it all came off rather underwhelming. I really do feel the game was simply stretched too thin for what they wanted to achieve. Perhaps I would have enjoyed it more as a 10 to 20 hour experience instead of a 40 hour experience. And no, that's not doing everything. If I wanted to do all the side quests and absolutely everything, it's probably closer to 50 or 60 hours. So no, the gameplay isn't bad, it just wasn't particularly engaging. The story was entertaining, but I didn't enjoy having to play through most of it twice before reaching new content. If there's ever a future sequel for the game, I think I would enjoy it more if they either moved more towards action or more towards RPG. The hybrid system it employed didn't work, in my opinion. That said, it was their first attempt at an action RPG, and it's a great first effort. But what will fans of Drakengard or the original Nier think? Well, there seems to be a lot of references, both indirect and direct, although be warned that a lot of it seems to be near the end of the game. You're going to have to go through most of the game before you get these references. On that note, the original Nier is a game I've been interested in since release, as the premise looks extremely interesting. However, the gameplay really put me off. Maybe Platinum can release a remastered version with tuned up gameplay. I'd be all over that. Well, what about a score for Nier Automata? You know I don't really like scoring games, but probably a 7.5 out of 10 or something along those lines. Most of the game is above average, but not groundbreaking or mind-blowing. The soundtrack is great. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this review was useful. Until next time, take care, and if you have any questions that I didn't answer here, do ask down below in the comments. And just for the sake of clarity, I achieved endings A, B, C, D, and E, and maybe a dozen of the joke endings.